Welcome back to the Pig Trail Show. We have a very special guest joining us this week, your Hog Hoops insider, Kevin McPherson. We got a lot to talk about, Kevin, especially because I feel like we can say a basketball back this week as we have some exhibition games coming up this Friday against UT Tyler and then another one the next week against Purdue. So I know a lot of fans are excited about both of those matchups. We're going to get into those in just a second. But first, we have some more recent news to talk about that Arkansas's Pro Day was this past Wednesday. We got to see a few pictures that were posted by their social media accounts. And, you know, Kevin, I know you noticed this, but I noticed this as well. Trevin Brazile getting some reps there. We didn't see any videos, but we saw some pictures of him, and it looked like he was going full contact 5-on-5 scrimmaging, which was a little earlier than Musselman's original timeline. So that might be some good news there. Give me some of your other thoughts on Pro Day, and also talk about Brazile too.
Yeah, you know, that was the first thing that jumped out at me when the University of Arkansas released photos from it. One of the first photo was Brazile jumping center against freshman Bay Fall. And that was 5-on-5. It struck me immediately. I shot a text out immediately to my source. It doesn't get any better than this one. And I just said, that looks like 5-on-5 for Brazile, and he's returned to it. And I got a one-word response, yes. And so that confirmed it. Trevor Brazile back to 5. Look, Musselman told us back on September 28th, it was a Thursday, that Brazile would be probably 2.5 weeks away. I asked him in that post open media portion of practice, when is Brazile going to get back to 5-on-5? Because he didn't go through the portion we saw. And he said, you know, we're probably 2.5 weeks away. Well, Wednesday of last week was Pro Day. So less than 2 weeks later, 13 days, he's going through 5-on-5 live. It sort of changed. It's just a shorter timeline than what Musselman initially thought when he spoke to the media. But it also means that he's back doing that kind of activity, at least for that day, you know, even sooner than expected when you've got that first October 20 exhibition game against UT Tyler that you mentioned. So it brings up a couple of things. One is Arkansas fans have been waiting to see, when does Trevin Brazile make that full return? Let's not forget the injury that led to all of this delay happened back in early December. I mean, you're 9 games into your season. You haven't even gotten to SEC play yet, and he was done. This is kind of the point of return right now. That's because that's everything. When you're able to compete 5-on-5, that's what basketball is. And so they've upgraded that. All right. That's a big deal. But also, it also kind of makes you wonder, is this a guy that they take the bubble wrap off at least initially? Maybe he starts against UT Tyler and plays a few minutes. Maybe they do him kind of like they did Nick Smith Jr. a couple of times last year when he worked his way back with his knee situation and then played a few minutes in the first game that he was officially back, you know, just enough to get on the court, not really impact the game. So there's all kinds of possibilities even for Texas Tyler that I thought may not be on the table based on the original timeline. So I think that's important with Brazile. I think the other thing that stands out, Courtney, I've talked to a couple of NBA scouts who attended. There were, by the way, 23 teams represented of the 30 NBA teams. I think over 30 scouts and maybe some front office personnel, a combo of different things there representing those 23 teams. But I've already gotten feedback from some of them, and to a person, I have heard that Trevin Brazile was exceptional during Pro Day. So not only was he playing, they liked what they saw. This is Arkansas. You know, last year everybody knew Arkansas with the 3 5-stars that they were likely one and dones. You might have 3 first-rounders there, at least 2. That's how that played out. This team, the idea is a healthy Trevin Brazile gives Arkansas a chance to be back in that green room for the next NBA draft in 2024, because Brazile could potentially be a first-round guy. There's mocks that have him at that kind of that late first round. I think he's got potential to move up to be a lottery guy if things go just right, because I think he was on a track to be a first-rounder and potential lottery pick before he got hurt last year. So having said that, he was one. The other name that stood out along with Trevin Brazile that I kept hearing that scouts were impressed with was Devontae Devo Davis, the 4th-year guard. All SEC defensive team, and you love to hear that because here's a young man that came back. This is a rare Musselman 4th-year player, and he's back. And so you want to hear that he had a good Pro Day, because it tells you that the 2 bookends, the 2 returnees that set the table for everything, had a big day when their eyes were on them from NBA personnel that could impact whether they get drafted or not. So you hope they build on that, but that's always a positive sign. two or three other names mentioned, but I mentioned how many teams were represented. I mentioned how, that there are over 30 in the building at the Basketball Performance Center to watch that. But I think it's very encouraging not only that Brazil is back, that he performed well, but it also lends itself to think that maybe we do see him in exhibition season, because we know we're going to talk more about that. But we know that November 6th regular season opener is not that far away. We're a couple of weeks away from that now.
Absolutely. And I know a lot of fans would love to see him at least a little bit in those exhibition games. I know they're just really excited to just see his return. I love to hear that he was one that impressed, and also that Devo Davis did well as well. I know fans are going to be happy to hear that from you too, Kevin. We're talking about injuries, though. When we mention Brazil, it's hard not to also ask you about Khalif Battle, right? If you don't know the situation with Khalif, last week in the red-white game, or was it last week or the week before? All my time period is getting all messed up because of football. But in that red-white game, we saw him go out for warm-ups and then go into the locker room, come back out with a boot on. So any update on his injury? Do you think we might see him in any of these exhibition games, Kevin?
Yeah, that's a big question mark right now, Courtney. I could tell you that people were wondering, did he take part in Pro Day? The first scout that I spoke with about it said he did not go. So he was not participating in that. It may be, and it's a situation I think remains day to day, because the testing, Musselman talked about it after that red-white game. When you mentioned he came back out of the locker room in a boot, this wasn't a fashion statement. He was in one of those walking boots on crutches and street clothes. And so you wonder, the prep media is asking about it after that red-white showcase game. Musselman says they did initial x-rays and testing. I've since found out, and Musselman said during that opportunity with the media, they're going to do more the following day. Well, they did. And what I was told was, this is not considered to be serious. This effectively boils down to dealing with a nagging soreness issue. So we'll see how long that continues to keep him out and away. But he's a guy that I've had projected based on what he did at Temple, based on Arkansas, how they targeted him early in April for that, when they got the 5 backcourt players to replace all the backcourt that fled to the NBA draft. But he's a guy that to me was being brought in to not only compete for a starting role, but certainly going to fit into the top 6 or 7 rotation. That now to me is on the table. And to me right now, if a guy's out, when you're heading into exhibition season, who knows when he's ready to be full go? Who knows how much time maybe he's missed, and that impacts his understanding on both ends of the court of what they want and blending in with other guys around him. I'm not knocking Khalif Battle, and if he's needing to get back on his timeline, he needs to do that. My point is that I think it leaves uncertain what was expected to be a top rotation role, and where other guys might have to fill the void, step in, and then how long does it take once he does come back for him to get acclimated and be at a place where the coaching staff is comfortable plugging him into what they expected would be his role. So I think there's several dynamics there. While we're getting good news on Brazil, I would say right now there's a lot of questions still surrounding Khalif Battle based on what I just said. But also, even when he gets back, remember, Brazil was in the system for a year. He played 9 games last year at Arkansas. So even though he hasn't been full go, there's less of a curve for him. For a guy like Battle, who hasn't been around as long, and he missed parts of the limited June and July practices, a good chunk of that. Then when Arkansas first got back to campus in August, and we see this now, again, not knocking the player or the person, but saying it absolutely impacts how things could play out. And when you're talking to Musselman, traditional 6, 7, 8 rotation, that does, you do go in your exhibition season saying, okay, there's at least one player who we thought might be day one in that group, who may now be trying to get that figured out while other guys have to then step up. And that's why it's always good to see the recruiting class Arkansas had and the guys they brought back. Because I think, and I've been saying it for a while, this is Musselman's deepest at every position. There's more positional diversity and versatility than I've seen since he's been at Arkansas. When you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I think that's a great thing, because we know injuries dogged this team last year. I think he's better suited, Musselman is, to deal with that this year when we talk about a guy, in this example, like Khalif Battle.
Yeah, absolutely. And you make a great point, Kevin. My dad talks about it all the time. When you have a guy that you expected to have in that rotation and now you don't have him, you kind of have to plug the hole. And when he does get back, whenever that is, you've already worked with a different rotation. And now it's getting him back into that system. And no no hate to Khalif Battle. You're right. He just hasn't been in this system before. So having that added benefit that Trevin Brazil has of being here for a year, knowing the system, it's going to be a lot easier for him to jump back in whenever that is, even if it's not in those exhibition games, rather than Khalif Battle. But we hope the best for him. We hope, like you said, it's not as serious, and hopefully we can see him play very early on in the season, because I know he is a guy that, like we said on the show before, is set to make a big impact on this team this year. Okay, let's talk about those exhibition games. I talked about UT Tyler coming up this Friday. We talk about those D2 teams all the time, Kevin. They can be misleading for Arkansas, but I do want to mention some of the stats on UT Tyler, because a lot of people are going, who are these guys? Where did they come from? Last season, they went 9-17, and they were on an 8-game losing streak to end their season. So they didn't end last season on a very high note, right? Going into this season, I know some things have changed for them, but what can you expect from this team going into this exhibition game? What do you want to see from Arkansas besides, of course, maybe Trevin Brazil getting some playing time?
Right. I mean, I mentioned that as a possibility. I'm intrigued by that. Arkansas struggled a couple of seasons ago, 2 or 3 years ago, against a D2 out of Oklahoma. That game went down to the wire. We said that last week. There's always that potential for that. Basketball's basketball on any given night, and these teams have nothing to lose. They're coming in for this experience. It's a chance to knock off Goliath, and sometimes they play their best, and sometimes Arkansas has struggled. At other times, Arkansas has its way with this kind of opponent, and everybody gets to play. So this is a situation where I do look for maybe Musselman to kind of show us his hand a little bit on an early rotation. Again, Battle is a question mark. Even Brazil remains a question mark. So if one or both of those guys aren't able to go, we're still not going to get the full picture necessarily on Musselman's plans moving forward, because he wants both of those guys back and expects at some point he'll have both. But we might see some of the other players who are kind of slotted in, what their minutes might look like. Again, if Arkansas, plays well and gets a big lead, I would think that guys who may not be factored into the rotation moving forward are going to see maybe more minutes than they normally would. Arkansas's got that next exhibition game against Purdue in 8 days after the 20th, on the 28th. And so I think that'll give fans even more of an opportunity to see what a rotation might look like than maybe necessarily this D2. But you have to take it seriously. I really haven't scouted this team. You've got more data on them, by the way, than I've gotten into it so far. I'm waiting a little closer to game time to put out some stuff on UT Tyler. But you have to take every opponent seriously. I know that sounds silly, but Arkansas almost lost to a D2 out of the state of Oklahoma a few years ago. That was really close. Arkansas was losing most of that game, was behind by double digits for a while. That's real. So you always take every opponent seriously. And I think the other thing is, you're not only looking for rotation, but how are guys blending together? Red-white game's one thing. There was a lot of things that looked good offensively, not as much defensively. I expect Eric Musselman spent a lot of time working on the defense in the 2-week gap between red-white and this UT Tyler game. But also, you didn't see true chemistry because you've divided up your roster evenly, and then you played a game. This is different. Everybody's together on the same bench now. So how do the minutes get dispersed? A lot of that's going to be, how well you're playing, and, are you counting on 5 or 6 guys to win a game against the D2 late, or are you comfortably ahead? And then the guys they do put out there, what combinations look good? What personnel packages? Okay, I see why he has these guys playing together at this juncture of the game or on the court right now. So all those are things we're looking at. Again, I bring up names like Devo Davis. I think Tremont Mark, L. Ellis. I think those three, not knowing if Brazil's going to go or not, but I think those three are guys not only that we could see in the starting lineup, and probably at least 2 of those guys, if not all 3 in the starting lineup, but I think those guys go in with expectations on day one to be a central part of what Arkansas is doing, regardless of who else is in the mix or not. So I'm going to keep an eye on those 3 in particular. I want to see Davenport and Pinion, after what they did, trading those 3 daggers in that media open practice and then the red-white game, because I think the big thing with them is how much can they be counted on defensively. And so let's see what they do in this opportunity, and maybe one of those guys gets a start, especially if Battle's not ready. And then I also am looking at some other pieces in there. I think Chandler Lawson is a guy, the transfer from Memphis, who had 2 years at Oregon before 2 at Memphis. that Arkansas picked up in June, started practice in the fall semester. I think he's a guy that has carved his way into in a top 8 rotation. I think he's top 3 in Arkansas's front line rotation, or top 4, top 2 in the 4 spot. But I think he's a guy that we could even see start at times. I wouldn't be shocked to see him in the starting lineup, even in the exhibition season. And again, where does Brazil factor in there? Because if Brazil's ready to go, he's your one at the 5. But so anything's on the table right now for a lot of these guys, at least in terms of getting that top 8 rotation. And I think that's why even a game like this, win big or play tight, however it plays out, you're looking at all those different factors in some of these names I mentioned.
Absolutely. And you're also looking at playing some of those younger guys as well. You want to see Bay
Yeah.
Fall and Leighton Blocker and give them an opportunity
Yeah.
to showcase what they can do. Because if you're up big, that's a time where you can put in some of those guys where you're like, hey, we want to see what you can do. We want to get you guys an opportunity to play. Or if you do play it close, maybe you put in your main guys, your main 5 for most of the matchup. You talk about D2, and I've said it on this show before, Kevin. My dad's a D2 coach. He has played plenty of D1s over his course of coaching for the past 25 years. And I can tell you, he has been close with some of those D1 teams.
Absolutely.
Last year they played Georgia Tech in an exhibition game, and they kept it close with them all throughout the first half. It was, pretty deceiving because Georgia Tech was getting frustrated. They were like, why are we not playing this D2 team? Well, and it's because these D2 teams, they get a lot of D1 talent. So it's not, it's much more deceiving when you see D1, D2, whereas actually these teams are a lot more talented than maybe their records show, than that D2 label across their name shows as well. Because my dad over the years, they battled with Mississippi State one time years ago. They battled with Florida with the Billy Donovan years. And so those are times where you're like, what is this little D2 doing, battling with some of the best in college basketball? And that's because they have the talent too. And especially with that COVID year, you've seen those guys drop down to the D2 level from D1 because they don't have enough roster spots. Things happen with the, roster management, scholarships. So that's where a lot of my dad got a lot of players from the D1 level just because of that. So again, can be a little deceiving there when you play a D2 in exhibition games. And don't be scared, Arkansas fans, if they keep it a little closer than you would like. So I like that we mentioned that there. Kevin, this is the Hog Hoops Report. We always got to talk about recruiting. And this past week, Arkansas extended 4 offers to 2025 recruits. Can you talk about those guys?
Yeah, late in the week, by the way, Caden Bug Edwards, who took an unofficial visit to Arkansas in January. He was there for Arkansas's win at home against Ole Miss at Bud Walton Arena. Duncanville, Texas kid. Okay, what that immediately sends up, Anthony Black memories, right? The product of Duncanville, Texas, 5-star. Arkansas's making inroads in Texas. We know that because of Black and Jordan Walsh and what they were able to do. And so you continue to cast that wide net. But how wide is it on these 4 offers? They're all 4 Texas kids. They're all 4 in the class of 2025. We know Arkansas, 2 commitments in the past 30 days or so. When we look at that 2024 class, that may very well be it for Arkansas. And certainly seeing these offers go out to 2025 tells me the staff is focused on this next recruiting cycle right now. It's kind of front and center for a minute. But these offers, Caden Bug Edwards, 6'3" guard, Duncanville, Texas, national top 50 recruit. I mentioned he came to Bud Walton Arena to watch the Hoop Hogs win over Ole Miss back in January. So there was already the Duncanville connection with Black, but also he's been on campus once. So here's a guy that now just picked up his Arkansas offer. I think it was on Thursday. And then we move into Friday. Arkansas put 3 offers out to 3 more Texas kids. And there's some Arkansas connections there. First, you have Jermaine O'Neal Jr., who we've talked about a lot. He had a couple of unofficial visits scheduled. One for that Purdue game that got changed. Then it was supposed to happen in September. Then that got at least postponed. So at some point they plan on getting him on campus. But the 6'5" wing at a Dynasty Prep in Dallas Fort Worth. He's a wing small forward. His dad, Jermaine O'Neal Sr., was one of the original none and dones. Came straight out of high school. Was an NBA All-Star, Hall of Fame guy. But Musselman's dad, Bill Musselman, was an assistant coach at the Portland Trail Blazers, that was the original NBA organization who drafted Jermaine O'Neal Sr. So there's a connection there. I think Arkansas, now that this offer's gone out, it tells me they feel good enough about that recruitment. They feel like they're going to get him on campus at some point. We'll see when that plays out. Maybe he'll be back on for that Purdue game, Courtney. We'll see. Well, I'm going to get a list of visitors out for these 2 exhibition games soon. I got to get green lighted on some of that stuff. But those are just 2 of the names on offers. Parker Jefferson, a 6'9" center out of Waxahachie, Texas, has also taken an unofficial visit to Arkansas last year. His parents, he would be a legacy if he became a Razorback. National top 100 kid, 6'9" center, but his parents both played athletics at the University of Arkansas. His mom on the women's basketball team. His dad played a season on the football team. So here's a young man that's, like I said, been on an unofficial visit last year. He's familiar with Arkansas because of his parents and that visit, but he just picked up that scholarship offer. And last but not least, Hudson Greer, a 6'6" wing, small forward, national top 50 guy. He and Bug Edwards, both national top 50. Jermaine O'Neal Jr. and Parker Jefferson, both national top 100. So they're all 4 stars. But Hudson Greer out of Austin, Texas, Arkansas has been on him for a while now, going back to this summer. And I really have kind of been paying attention to him. Really good perimeter player at 6'6", got good size, can shoot the basketball, nice skill set. But Arkansas also extended a scholarship offer to him. So 3 of those names got those offers on Friday, end of the week. And then a day earlier, it was Caden Bug. I love that nickname. Edwards out of Duncanville, who got the offer. But all of them class of 2025, all of them state of Texas. You know, Arkansas had several kids a few months ago from the in-state, a group of 4, 2 from 2026, 2 from 2025, that picked up offers basically at the same time. So this was like, okay, you're expanding the footprint on your recent offers, in-state, and then you in a nice cluster, and then you've got a cluster in the state of Texas in 2025.
Yeah, and I know you'll keep us updated on those guys as well. Really quickly, Kevin, because we are running out of time, and I know we want to talk about some Pro Hogs in just a second, but a little bit more recruiting news. You've been posting about a lot of different camps this week, and one of them over in Las Vegas, the Wooten camp, has 3 in-state kids over there. Can you update us really quickly on how those guys did in that camp?
All of them have Arkansas offers. All of them, I noticed, had some kind of mention throughout the week of having being among the standout performers. But you've got class of 2025, Terrion Burgess, national top 30 player, high-level 4-star, 6'9" combo forward out of Benton, Arkansas, right here in Central Arkansas. And then 2 more from the Little Rock area as well. When you're talking about Jacob Lanier, ESPN just bumped him up in that class of 2026 to the top 25. He comes in at number 25 in ESPN's national rankings for 2026. 6'6" combo guard out of Maumelle, also showed well. And then you have Jason JJ Andrews, a 6'6" wing. Look at all this height and size on these guys: 6'9", 6'6", 6'6". But Andrews, a 6'6" wing at Little Rock Christian Academy, also took part in that just prior to Wooten camp. He was part of the Junior National Team USA mini camp last weekend, was Andrews. So you're getting a lot of national attention. By the way, the Wooten camp is a big deal. It's normally held in Dallas-Fort Worth. This year it's in Las Vegas. Over 100 of the top players in the country representing multiple classes. But it's in a McDonald's All-American Game showcase platform, because a lot of the scouts who will vote on the McDonald's All-American team later on for some of these guys, they're watching these players and taking notes and making sure that they understand who they might want to vote for. And so a lot of exposure for in-state kids with Arkansas Razorback scholarship offers.
I love that. I love to hear that. And I know the fans do too. Really quickly, Kevin, we got to talk about those Pro Hogs. I love seeing opening Twitter this week, seeing preseason NBA basketball and seeing the talk of preseason NBA basketball. We got Jordan Walsh with the Celtics. I know fans were going crazy over him. Anthony Black. I know I have a lot of Magic fans that follow me. I'm from the Orlando area, so I saw a lot of Anthony Black this week, which was great. But also Stanley Amudi with the Pistons. I was impressed to see his stat line. Talk about some of the Pro Hogs real quick, Kevin.
Yeah, Amudi, 18 points in his last outing against the Oklahoma City Thunder with Isaiah Joe and Jalen Williams. And Moody with the 18 points, but 4 or 5 from 3. And he, in the last few minutes, it was a comeback win for the Pistons, 128-125. He had a go-ahead three-pointer from 29 feet out. That's a deep NBA range shot. With under 2 minutes to go, that put his team back in the lead. He hit 2 free throws with just over 4 seconds left to ice it Those were the final points of the game. But 128, 125, Stanley and Moody with a nice stat line. Those 18 points. I think he had 5 rebounds. He always has a hustle play stat, Courtney, whether it's a steal or more or block shot or more. Because he's a good defender too at 6'6", athletic. But he's just a nice player. And let's see if he can carve himself a role. He's been in the G League. Let's see if he can figure out a way to make someone's 15-man roster. If not, maybe still a two-way kind of guy. But I think there's a future for Stanley and Moody in the NBA. Isaiah Joe in the same game. He's in a 6-man role with the Thunder. He had 10 points. He's 13 of 14 from the free throw line in 2 exhibition games so far, averaging 12 points. Moses Moody averaging 15 points per game. He plays later tonight. Golden State will be on either one of the ESPN channels or NBA TV. Another exhibition game tonight for Golden State, but through 2 games, 15 points and 4 rebounds, shooting the ball at 53% from the field, including 50% from 3. So Moses Moody off to a good preseason start. You always have to throw that caveat out there. It is preseason. You're not always going up against the top rotation guys in some stretches of the game. So you always have to remember that. But still, Arkansas's players, you mentioned Moody. We talked about that. Isaiah Joe, Moses Moody, Daniel Gafford, who was thought to would be out for up to 4 weeks, actually has played in all of Washington's preseason games at this point, the Wizards. And he's shown well. He's done a good job. Bobby Portis, who I thought might be limited in preseason. They've limited his minutes, but they haven't kept him out of a game yet. He's been playing. Even though it's not a lot, it's a small amount of minutes, he's still on the court for the Bucks. So all the pro Hogs right now, Nick Smith Jr. had a nice first preseason game, 11 points, 5 rebounds, and hit some clutch shots in the fourth quarter in a back and forth game. And so all of the pro Hogs, whether they're rookies or veteran guys, they're all blending in. They're all playing well. Ricky Council IV with a nice dunk against Walsh's Celtics. And we know Patrick Beverly, the former Hog, the pro Hog, he's on those 76ers, that same squad. So it's just everywhere right now, Courtney. Pro Hogs in basketball is a thing right now. It is probably more players right now than we've seen since probably the early to mid 90s.
We have way too many guys to update on the show every week. We're going to have to limit it to, okay, we're going to update one guy each week because we have way too many to update on. And that's a good thing. I like to hear that. But we will update everyone on how they're doing when the season officially does begin at the end of the month. And I know you said preseason. This is just a little taster of what we're going to get. I hope to see all these guys do very well in their seasons, whether it be their rookie season or more than that, or I hope that they all do well. So anyways, Kevin, it's always nice to chat basketball with you on the show. We're going to have much more Pig Trail coming up after the break. Stay with us.